Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. I can't believe it's almost the end of March already. The first quarter of 2020 is almost over. And a lot of people have come out with their top 10 anticipated games, and I typically hold off on this until I get back from the GAMA Trade Show, which I just did. The GAMA Trade Show is sort of the official kickoff in North America for the 2020 board game season, where retailers, distributors, publishers, and media show up. The retailers learn how to run their classes better, but there's also, or their stores better, but there's also a lot of sort of announcements and things that people are showing off, and sometimes they'll have prototypes and such. There's an exhibit hall. It's not open to the public. It's sort of just industry guests that get to come. So I was privileged enough to be able to go again this year, and I get to see a lot of things that were coming up. And now I always wait for this because I feel like a lot of things get told about there, and I didn't want to miss these. So now that I'm coming back from GAMA straight, I want to share with you my top 10 anticipated games of 2020. Here we go.
Number 10.
My number 10 is from Next Move Games, which essentially are imprints from Plan B games. And they do games that are sort of 4 letters long, they're sort of abstracted, they're quick to play but have a lot of depth, like Azul, or All the Azuls, and Reef from Emerson Matsuuchi. So this is the next one in that line called Bees, B-E-Es, Bees, as it's flying around. Now the game, I like the theme. I like sort of unique animal. I like animal themes. I like unique themes. I'm tired of the same zombies, space, stuff like that. So I like the theme of it. It's sort of an abstracted game where you're sort of flying your bee in different directions, and each turn you have to fly you can't fly the same direction twice. You have this sort of control tower that tells you which ways you can fly and how many spots you can fly in those directions. And you're trying to gather different nectar at those spots, and then you're placing them in your hive, but you're only able to place adjacent to other nectars that you've placed in your hive, and certain spots are you're only able to place on if you went certain distances to get that nectar. So it's sort of like an abstracted idea where you're thinking turns ahead, trying to figure out how best to get the nectar, how best to put them in your hive, because you're trying to meet certain objectives on different goals in order to score points. And so it looks kind of cool, a lot of forward thinking. You've got goals. How do I get these different nectars into the different spots of my hives, depending on where I've moved, but then I have some restrictions onto where I moved last turn, and a lot of sort of things like that. So they've been lots of hits for me, Next Move Games, and this one looks like it's right up my alley, and that's why it's made my list.
Number 9.
Number 9 is from BoardGameTables.com, who's been knocking it out of the park since they started creating games. They did, On Tour, which was like high production roll and write. Last year they did QE, which was like in my top 10 games of the year last year. Great economic game, bidding game. This year they're coming out with Loot of Lima. Now they did a Kickstarter last year. In full disclosure, I did do a paid preview for that, but it's a deduction game and I love it. So this game has sort of aspects of Sleuth, which is one of my favorite deduction games, where you have a limited amount of options, but you do have some options of what questions to ask, but you can ask anyone, and I like that. You've got confounded information. You're learning a little bit from this player, a little bit from this player. Everybody can hear what's going on. You're trying to tie that information together, sort of connect the dots as to where the treasure is. You're rolling these dice, which are giving you the options of where to ask. And so based on those dice, you get to decide which 2 of the 3 you're going to use to sort of set up this cool coordinate system to know what to ask somebody. Kind of a cool aspect there. Also, everybody gets sort of 3 special abilities that you can use during the game, and Stretch Goals brought out a solo and 2-player rules, and I love it when a deduction game can play with 2 players. Interesting to see how that works. And since I did do a preview for this, I put that link in the description of the video. But if you like pure deduction games, Loot of Lima is going to be one you want to check out, and that's why it made my list.
Number 8.
Number 8. These are sort of graphic novel adventures. They're from Van Ryder Games. They've done a handful of these, but last year or the year before they came out with Crusoe Crew, and this was sort of a different twist on graphic novel adventures. Usually they're solo books that you go through and it's like those choose your own adventures, but sort of like in a comic book style, and you're tracking different things. But in Crusoe Crew, there were, it's cooperative, and this is sort of using that same system. And I recently played through Crusoe Crew again on my way to the GAMA Trade Show last week, and it just reminded me of how amazing that system is. Now, this one is not for Crusoe Crew because that already came out. This is for Sherlock Holmes Baker Street Irregulars. It was on Kickstarter recently, and it's going to be fulfilling this year. And the way that these books work is that system is everyone is a different character. It's for 1 to 4 players. And so each player's a different character, and for most of the game, you're all going to be going together, seeing the same things. You go, oh, it's a choose your own adventure. Do you want to go down this path or this path? Oh, I could see, let's all go down towards 138. This looks kind of cool. You go down there. Sometimes there's things that are hard to see, and everyone's a different character, and everyone has different abilities. Like in this case, Myrtle's a master of disguise. She can slip past, observant people, and Ike is particularly good at throwing a beat down on the foes of the irregulars, providing some muscle, and Vicky's an expert at climbing acrobatics. So you might, based upon your abilities, you might see numbers that other players don't see, and you can kind of go off into your own little quest and see different things and bring things back. And Sherlock Holmes stuff, mysteries, I love. So you're trying to solve mysteries here, but you're doing it cooperative and using that same system that's in Crusoe Crew, which is amazing. Can't wait to see what this is like.
Number 7.
Now, a couple years ago, Portal Games came out with Detective: A Modern Crime board game, and I loved this game. Made my top 10 of the year. It's a very immersive experience, but they were long. They're 3 hours plus, and each of the scenarios built on the previous one, so you showed how to play the thing with the same group, and that was sort of the drawbacks to the game. Well, I think Ignacy has listened, and they're bringing out Detective Season 1, which uses sort of a similar system as Detective, but they're shorter, more streamlined versions. So they're going to take 90 minutes instead of 3 hours, so about in half the time. There's 3 standalone cases in this box so that you can play it with different groups. Another problem I had with the first one, which I still love, by the way, but this, because it's more streamlined, because of the mechanisms are even more streamlined, because there's 3 different standalone cases, and because they're only 90 minutes apiece, I'm super interested in this. So I feel like I won't get stuck trying to get the same group together and such. So this I'm super excited about. I can't wait till it comes out. It's Detective Season 1 from Portal Games.
Number 6.
Number 6 is one I got to learn more about at the GAMA Trade Show, speaking with Colby Doubt from Plaid Hat Games, is Forgotten Waters. Now, this is a pirate-themed Crossroads game. If you think of Crossroads, it was initially came out with Dead of Winter, which is very popular. Then Gen 7 had some Crossroads. This is the next one in that. It's a cooperative game, but like those other Crossroad games, you have your own personal goals you're trying to get. You get to create your own pirate, your own backstory. You're unlocking different events for better endings. You're getting your character, gaining skills. This game has a web app. It's assisted with a web app, and it has professional narration of the different immersion of the stories that's going to go, because this is sort of an open world, open exploration where you're going around anywhere you want. There's narration. There's a lot of mechanisms in the game when you go to different locations, different spots you can go to. The last person has to select certain things specifically that might do bad things. So it was just really interesting watching Colby talk about this. He says this game, they put more hours and more work into this game than any other game they've ever published, which is crazy because their games are usually like big and grandiose. Now there's 5 scenarios in this game. Each scenario has 2 parts, and each part's about 2 hours. So it's about 4 hours per scenario, 5 different scenarios. And each scenario, it's not a campaign. Each scenario, you'll actually create a new pirate for each of them. So it just seems really interesting. It sounds very immersive, and the Crossroads and such, it hits all those buttons. So looking forward to Forgotten Waters.
Number 5.
Number 5 is from Cranio Creations. A few years ago, they came out with one of my favorite dice drafting games, Grand Austria Hotel. And this is designed by the same design team. And from what I hear, it's sort of an engine building game that is inspired, the mechanisms are inspired by some of the ones in Grand Austria Hotel. So you say that, I'm already interested in it. It's based on 16th century legend of the Golem of Prague. You'll be creating and growing powerful and magical creatures that will be moved around, the main places of magical Prague under the control of their masters. But if the golems become too powerful, it will destroy everything it encounters on its way. Now you're going to be pulling different colored marbles for actions, and the number of marbles available in the corresponding action line determines how much power you get from that action. Also, there's different colors of marbles and moves you up on different tracks like external, commercial, ancient, magic. And these tracks help you keep control of your golems. If you get the correct combination of 2 colors, then you'll receive the favor of one of the powerful prog characters, which will differ each round. So it sounds like, when I saw a picture of like the marbles, it like reminded me of like Potion Explosion, where you're pulling a colored marble from a thing, but that's going to tell you what your action is, how many marbles is the power of the action, and then you're trying to sort of move up different tracks on the color of those marbles. It seems really cool, and since it's from that design team and they're inspired by Grand Austria Hotel, no brainer for me, Golem.
Number 4.
Now, number 4, I am not putting any straight reprints on this list. However, this is not a straight reprint. This is a true second edition. It was on Kickstarter last year. This is Cleopatra, the Society of Architects Deluxe Edition from Mojito Studio. Now, I have the original Cleopatra, and I've actually had a chance to play this new version. Now, not the actual production model, but I've actually worked with the publisher to play a mocked up version of this new version. I plan on doing a more in-depth video on this later, but I can just tell you, my gosh, it does feel like a very different game from the original. It's a lot better. I'll go more in detail in a separate video. But, they've done a lot of things like taking the characters out of the deck, and now you can activate them on a sort of track, and when you activate them, they become more expensive for everybody else, so you can use them when you want to. You can combo things together. They've changed the way things score to make it more balanced. The ending used to be super brutal, where if you had the most corruption, you just can't win. Well, now you just like minus a bunch of points depending on the difference between how much corruption you have and how much corruption the most player has. Anyway, the production looks like it's going to be even better than the original, which is crazy because the original one's nuts. And they've done a lot to make this game a lot better. It does feel like a different game, even though it feels like the same game. And so I'm really excited for this because I've been able to sort of play it, but not like the full version, but I've been able to play mechanically how it plays, and I'm just super excited to have it all come together. And by the way, it's co-designed by my favorite designer, Bruno Cathala, so that's a no-brainer too. Looking forward to the deluxe edition of Cleopatra.
Number 3.
My number 3 is one that I saw at the GAMA Trade Show and I fell in love with. This is from the Cosmos 2-player line. They're known for their 2-player lines. Lost Cities, Tally-Ho, Targi. This is called Aqua Limb. Now, this is a pure abstract game. Takes about 20 to 30 minutes to play. It's super, super simple. I mean, you're either trying to like set yourself up for set collection of adjacent tiles of the same color, and the other player is trying to set themselves up for adjacent sets of the same animals. And so you're basically, on your turn, you're moving a tile that's on a board out of the way, or moving it somewhere. You're placing one of the few available tiles that's face up, and then you're flipping up a tile to add to that flip up, that sort of spot where other players can take turns from. Super simple. Move a tile, place a tile, flip a tile. That's it. But the game is amazing. It's got so much depth. It's got so much to think about. It reminded me a little bit of sort of like Onitama, where like, yeah, the game is super simple, but man, and once you play it once, you're going to want to play it again and again and again and again and again. This actually was the one, out of all the games we saw at GAMA, this was the one that myself and I went with Glory Hound, who also has a great YouTube channel. We both said this was the best game we had seen at GAMA. And again, it's a quick little 20-minute abstract, but man, it grabs you and it makes you want to play it over and over. And that is Aqua Limb, and coming from Cosmos.
Number 2.
Number 2 is a deduction game. It was on Kickstarter last year. Full disclosure, I did do a paid preview for this, but I love deduction games. One of my favorite genres I mentioned earlier in this video, called Search for the Planet X. Now, it's coming from Foxtrot Games, and they, this is, it's a space-themed deduction game, but it's app-based. Now, I know a lot of people don't like apps, but in deduction games, it can really help because deduction games can be fragile, meaning someone can give you an answer not knowing that they actually gave you an incorrect answer, and if they do that, then your entire game is lost. And who wants to play an hour game and be like, oh, you gave me a wrong answer? That's why I didn't figure it out. The app, you ask, there's different actions, and each of these actions take a different amount of time. And so because you're getting the answer from the app, then your answer can't be wrong and you can't screw anything up. If you screw something up, it's your fault, not somebody else's fault. I like that. Also, the different actions, they do take a different amount of time. You have a time track for actions, similar to say like Thebes or Patchwork, where you take actions, you move you move up into a certain spot, and whoever's in last place on that turn track gets to go next. So sometimes people might take powerful actions, but they're not going to be able to take another one until other players take possibly multiple actions. I really love that. You're also trying to figure out what's going on, and you're also publishing theories as you learn things. And at certain points of the game, those theories will be revealed, and you'll be possibly getting correct, points if you get correct ones. There's a normal and an advanced version. There's a way that you can start with different difficulties for each player. So if you're playing with a kid or someone who doesn't play a lot of deduction games, but you do, you can play at different difficulty levels. It also works well with 2 players, which is really hard to do with deduction games. It's it's a race to find Planet X, but you don't have to be the first one to win because of publishing theories and such. It's just cool in that way. Anyway, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video for Search for Planet X.
Number 1.
Now, before we get to my number 1, let me just do a couple of honorable mentions. I didn't want to talk about straight reprints in this video, so these are sort of some 2 honorable mentions. One of them is The Lost Code. That's the new name. It used to be called Think Straight, which is one of my favorite deduction games ever. It's unbelievable. With the original terrible components, no theme. The art looked goofy and kid-like. It was just awful. The art and components were terrible in that game, but the game was amazing that I kept it. So Mojito Studios, the ones that I already talked about, Cleopatra, is going to be bringing The Lost Code to us in 2020, and they made it look really cool, sort of like a Aztec theme. Again, the game is pretty themeless, but it makes it look a lot nicer. The Lost Code, it's such an amazing deduction game where you're bidding on what you think, what numbers are in front of you that you can't see. You're asking questions about them. It's amazing. I'm not going to talk too much more about that. I'll try to remember to put the link below me for my review of Think Straight, because mechanically it's the same game. If you like deduction games, oh my gosh, it's one of my favorites. The other one is Rococo Deluxe Edition from Eagle Gryphon Games. Now, I liked Rococo a lot. I loved the theme. I loved how it's played. But I had a little problem with the base game back in the day where it's like there's certain cards that come out certain ways, and they're the big part of scoring at the end of the game. And once you know what those cards are, because there weren't that many of them towards the end in the last round, or the last card that would come out, that you could kind of like go for a certain strategy and hope that card would come up because there weren't that many of them. Now, I had heard that the expansion fixed this because there's a lot more variability on the way that those cards come out and which ones there are. And this deluxe edition comes with that hard to find expansion. Plus, not to mention that they deluxeified it the way Eagle Gryphon does. It looks amazing. Lots of great components, lots of included expansions and such. So I did want to mention that Rococo Deluxe Edition is going to be coming out. That would have made this list if it wasn't more of sort of a straight reprint. Okay, on to my number 1. Sleeping Gods from Red Raven Games. Ryan Lockett is, in my opinion, the most talented person in our industry. He is an unbelievable artist and game designer and publisher and logistics person. Like, this guy is a one-man band that can do everything. And I don't know anybody that can do that many different things at those top-notch levels. Ryan's unbelievable, so I'm always interested in his games. Sleeping Gods, oh my gosh, like all his other games, look beautiful. Just draw you in with that artwork that you can just tell it's his when you look at it. It's a cooperative adventure game, sort of like a choose-your-own-adventure style where you'll be going through books, exploring different locations, open exploration. I love exploration games that are open, like Seventh Continent, even Tainted Grail that's sort of open like that and has that sort of choose your own adventure style. This has that, and I love that. So I'm really interested because of that. I like that you can sort of just stop whenever you want and just come back to it later, because it's just this one long, story that you're trying to finish. It's got some engine building with some interesting combat. When you hit certain things, you're putting tokens on different spots of that, which are covering things, maybe abilities or different things that they can trigger back with. I like the exploration of Tainted Grail, but the combat, even though it was kind of interesting and new, it was pretty, convoluted and fiddly, and nobody else was doing anything else for that whole time. It got a little boring. I like that this seems to be better than that. And again, the open exploration. This game just seems so immersive. It seems like, the Atlas book, and like he has in some of his other games, where you can go off a page and you find a different page and that's where you're at, and then trying to figure out what to do. If you want to do this, go to this page, go to this, go to that page. But there's a lot going on with a bunch of shared use cards that you're using together. Your action tokens that you use are sort of shared, so you don't want to use them all up, doing different things. So it just seems like mechanically it's amazing. It definitely looks amazing. And because I've been so much, these open exploration games that kind of are longer games are the longer types of games that I like. Again, Seventh Continent was my game of the year that year. Now with that being said, Seventh Continent for me, after the first curse, it took us about 25 hours to finish the first curse. And that was the type of game where we would sit down for 6 or 7 hours at a time without blinking an eye and didn't even know where the time went. I think this game's going to do the same thing. But when I was done with the first curse in Seventh Continent, I tried 2 other ones. And since we're on the same map and going to the same places, now you're trying to do something different, and certain different things would happen there. But I felt like once I'd sort of figure out the map and where to go and where not to go, the other curses weren't nearly as interesting. However, I still feel like I got my money's worth after 20 hours of play. Where this has, I think it said about 20 hours of play, 10 to 20 hours of play in the game, which is perfect because once you've explored that world, you're done. That's almost what I felt like Seventh Continent should have done. But there's also an expansion available that gives you a new location, new cards, and gives you some more things like that. So I just think that this is... I'm hoping for it to be as good as I imagine, which is going to be like unbelievable off the charts. And I've heard great things from people that have played it too. So, Sleeping Gods, my number 1 for 2020. Well, there you have my most anticipated games for 2020. I hope that you either have learned about games you did not even know existed, or if you've heard about them, I hope that you found a little bit more about them. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you love. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear, it's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.